sends a message about youth violence, and it's easy to see if you're in Benson. Good evening. I'm Quinicia Fraser.
I'm Bill Shammer. Prosecutors say the shooter was 13 years old at the time. The gunfire killed 19-year-old Aylon Reed nearly 1 year ago near 52nd and Curtis. Investigators believe the motive was payback for a gang-related shooting earlier that month.
KETV Newswatch 7's Josh Cristianto spoke with Reed's mother tonight, who has the support of the Omaha Police Union.
Along Northwest Radial Highway in Benson, a cry for justice by a grieving mother.
It's been very hard because there's been no justice. The system kind of just slapped us in the face with this.
Nearly 1 year ago, this house became the scene of Alicia Sexton's nightmare. Douglas County prosecutors alleging a 13-year-old armed with a gun entered Sexton's home one morning, then shot and killed her 19-year-old son, Aylon Reed. They say a 15-year-old was the getaway driver and that he and Reed were part of rival gangs.
These kids premeditated this murder. It wasn't just a bump into each other, conflict, and then this happened. They planned it.
Prosecutors initially charged the 15-year-old as an adult, but moved the case to juvenile court in May. Now he'll age out of the system in 3 years, and that doesn't sit well at all with Sexton.
The punishment has to fit the crime, and the punishment is not fitting the crime.
The judge ultimately decided juvenile court has more appropriate treatments. Undeterred, Sexton has now put up this billboard in Benson, calling for stricter juvenile justice reform, a picture of her son along with it. The Omaha Police Officers Association echoing the message, posting on Facebook, the balance between accountability and rehabilitation is currently lacking. For Sexton, it's a small price to pay for the justice she believes her son deserves.
You know, he doesn't get to speak for himself. I have to speak for him. I'm his mom, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to speak for him.
Josh Cristianto, KTV Newswatch 7.
Union County, the Sheriff's Office says they responded to the Department of Juvenile Justice facility tonight after reports of a riot. Now, they tell us that no one was hurt, but several rooms were damaged. We're told the situation was resolved quickly. Of course, we're working to learn more details. What's to do, bring to you here on air and online.
A Rikers inmate wants answers after their relative was found unresponsive in a jail cell Sunday and later died. And now CBS 2 investigative reporter Tim McNicholas has learned 3 jail employees are facing discipline.
William Johnstone.
Just outside City Hall.
William Johnstone.
Protesters read the names of people who've died in the custody of the Department of Correction. And one name,
Curtis Davis, say his name,
is especially important to Dennis Mellerson.
That was my cousin. He loved his children. He loved his family. We really want to know what happened to Curtis.
Jail staff found Davis unresponsive Sunday morning in his cell. He'd been at Rikers since early June after prosecutors said he slashed a man with a knife. CBS 2 has now learned the Department of Correction has suspended an assistant deputy warden and 2 officers accused of not properly touring the jail Sunday morning.
So I'd like the Department of Corrections, Department of Investigation, and the State Attorney General's office to get involved with this.
we don't get it.
The 7 inmate deaths so far this year are prompting these protesters to call for an end to Rikers. A federal judge will soon consider whether an outside authority will take over the jails, known as a receivership. But last week, DOC Commissioner Luis Molina told CBS 2 the jails should stay in the city's control.
Well, I understand from many that their patience is wearing thin, but I would say there has to be an appreciation for the level of stabilization that we were able to do.
Earlier this month, the DOC suspended 4 employees in relation to another Rikers death. As for Davis, Mellerson says his cousin intended to fight the charges against him in court. But now he'll never get that chance.
And we're feeling really upset, and we're feeling troubled.
And just last week, U.S. Attorney Damian Williams released a statement expressing his support for a receivership. He says he doesn't want to wait any longer for substantial progress. Commissioner Molina, on the other hand, says violence is down in the jails and staff members are showing up to work more often. At City Hall, Tim McNicholas, CBS 2
It
News.
takes place at City Hall today following the death of an inmate at Rikers Island.
The incident is renewing calls for reform at the facility and bolstering those who support a potential federal takeover. CBS 2's Zinnia Maldonado is live in Lower Manhattan with more. Zinnia?
Chris and Mary, good morning. Well, the number of fatalities at Rikers, 7 so far this year, has continued to spark protest and calls for new leadership of Rikers. Now, the DOC says just this past Sunday, inmate Curtis Davis was found unresponsive in his cell around 5 a.m. and he was pronounced dead just 30 minutes later. Now, the DOC says the 44-year-old had been in their custody since June 1st for allegedly stabbing a man in the eye during an argument. His death sparking questions as to if Rikers is improving, and allies, including the Jails Action Coalition and community members previously incarcerated, plan to rally here at City Hall today following his death, demanding change to Rikers leadership. Now, the U.S. Attorney for the Southern District recommended an outside authority known as a receiver should take over Rikers. That decision lies in the hands of Judge Laura Taylor Swain, who wrote in a filing last week the city has failed to, quote, address the dangerous conditions that perpetually plague the jails. Now, the city comptroller recently released a monthly dashboard report showing fewer incidents of violence in June, 47 assaults, down 7 from May, 67 fewer fights, and 18 fewer slashings and stabbings. Now, Mayor Adams saying Rikers can be fixed under local leadership.
I know I can fix Rikers. I want to give the opportunity to do so. I did in 18 months what previous administrations were unable to do.
Now, next steps discussing Rikers leadership will take place during an August 10th court date, and the rally we mentioned demanding change at the jail will begin at 12 p.m. We're live this morning from City Hall. Zinnia Maldonado, CBS 2 News.
Alvin Bragg has come under fire by some critics who claim he is not doing enough to address crime in the city.
Fox 5's Lisa Evers talked to Bragg about the perception that the city is unsafe.
I live here, I'm raising my family here, and so we have a lot more work to do. There's no doubt about it. But we have really encouraging signs. The data is all moving in the right direction.
I spoke one-on-one with Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg in Harlem. He's referring to the latest NYPD statistics that show shooting incidents down 24.7% the first 6 months of this year, and murders down by 3%. Robberies, burglaries, and shoplifting also declined. He tells me one reason is daily communication between prosecutors and their law enforcement partners.
We do a number of long-term investigations involving wiretaps. We do targeted enforcement, and so we're seeing the sort of returns on that investigative work, and we're going to keep on doing it.
For many city residents we spoke with, their daily experiences play a bigger role in their perception of crime than any statistics. This building super was once again painting over graffiti near the front entrance and tells us crime is out of control.
Yesterday you see the car is crashing, and the people he put it in, he take it the baseball, he put it the gun and everything. It's terrible. Anywhere, it's not safety.
He smashed the car with a baseball bat?
Yes.
Others say it all depends on what neighborhood you're in.
I think this is so iffy too. I mean, it depends on the neighborhood that you're in and the time of the day you might run into something.
Personally, I have had no experience on the streets.
I see it all the time. I haven't seen nothing change.
Many also expressed concerns about the subways, including D.A. Bragg, who acknowledges the perception issue personally.
I know the statistics that transit crime is down, but when one of my family members gets on the train, I too get a knot in my stomach.
The Manhattan DA tells me that he and his staff will continue to find new ways to use existing laws and targeted investigations to take violent criminals off the streets. On the Upper West Side, I'm Lisa Evers.
Rally began in support of the 7 Rikers detainees who have died so far this year at the prison, and CBS 2's investigative reporter Tim McNicholas joins us live outside City Hall with the protesters' demands and more. Tim? Doug, behind me, you can see former Rikers inmates, public defenders, and other community activists gathering for this rally. They're holding banners with the names of all 7 Rikers inmates who have died so far this year. They decided to hold this rally after the death of Curtis Davis, an inmate who was found unresponsive in his cell Sunday morning. And now we have just confirmed that 2 correction officers and 1 supervisor, an assistant deputy warden, have been suspended in relation to that death. Correction sources tell us that they are accused of not properly touring the jail Sunday morning. Davis is the 7th Department of Correction inmate to die so far this year. And earlier this month, the DOC suspended 4 employees in relation to another Rikers death. People gathered here today say Rikers should be shut down. But Department of Correction Commissioner Louis Molina told me last week the jail should stay in the city's control.
Well, I understand from many that their patience is wearing thin. But I think I would say there has to be an appreciation for the level of stabilization that we were able to do in the last 19 months.
It was very dangerous. I remember 16 years old, I got jumped like 2 times by 20 people. You know, people try to cut me, stab me.
A federal judge will ultimately decide whether an outside authority known as a receiver should take control of the city's jails. And just last week, we mentioned that statement from U.S. Attorney Damian Williams. He mentioned in that statement last week that he supports a receivership. He says he doesn't want to wait any longer for substantial progress. The folks gathered here today would agree with that sentiment. Commissioner Molina, on the other hand, he says that violence is down in the jails and the staff members are showing up to work more often. Live at City Hall, Tim McNicholas, CBS 2 News.